our second session today with Ryan Dohrn. We want to thank DuPont Pioneer for their continued sponsorship of the professional improvement sessions. You know, for as long as I remember in this organization, Pioneer has been a very faithful sponsor of our professional improvement, about getting us better at what we do, and this is no exception. They have done it today, so we thank DuPont Pioneer for continuing to do that. Also, if you've downloaded the mobile app that's sponsored by Farm Credit, you can find more information about the speaker that we have today. You can find more information about Ryan. If you just mash that and punch on the schedule, and if you go to today's session, you can just hit that. I actually noticed that inadvertently, and there's the bio of the speaker and everything in here. It's fairly handy, and it's free. That's the other part of it. No $9.99 for that app. It is free. And I downloaded it. It's the only app I have on my phone that I downloaded without having to put in a password. I don't know why that is, or if I should be concerned about it. But we're excited to have Ryan Dohrn from Brainswell Media back this afternoon. In the session, Ryan is going to guide us into the future as he shares web-related revenue trends. Please welcome back Ryan Dohrn. Ryan, thanks for sticking around.
Let's start with this is a actual television news story. This is not made up. These are not actors. This is legitimate, and I'll turn it up a little. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear it. It's quite comical. Hopefully, you'll laugh at the same points that I laughed as well. Are you ready? Now, this is typically the time when most people fall asleep after lunch, so stay with me. I threatened to move this session to the bar, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." Here we go.
Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. In fact, both local San Francisco papers are investing a lot of money to try and get a service just like that started. Science editor Steve Newman reports on one person already using the brand-new system.
17 stories up in his fashionable North Beach apartment, Richard Howard is calling a local number that will connect him with a computer in Columbus, Ohio. Meanwhile, across town, in this less than fashionable cubbyhole of the San Francisco Examiner, these editors are programming today's copy of the paper into that same Ohio computer. When a telephone connection between these two terminals is made, the newest form of electronic journalism lights up Mr. Howard's television with just about everything the Examiner prints in its regular edition. That is, with the exception of pictures, ads, and the comics. 8 newspapers around the country are currently in the computer network, and within the next few weeks, 3 others will join in.
This is an experiment. We're trying to figure out what it's going to mean to us as editors and reporters, and what it means to the home user. And we're not in it to make money. We're probably not going to lose a lot, but we aren't going to make much either.
The Examiner and Chronicle began service within the last 2 weeks and printed full-page ads about it. Of the estimated 2,000 to 3,000 home computer owners in the Bay Area, the Chronicle reports over 500 have responded by sending back coupons. Even though the electronic newspaper isn't as spiffy-looking as the ads imply, people using the system are excited about its potential.
With this system, we have the option not only of seeing the newspaper on the screen, but also optionally we can copy it. So anything we're interested in, we can go back in again and copy it onto paper and save it, which I think is the future of the type of interrogation and individual will give to the newspapers.
This is only the first step in newspapers by computer. Engineers now predict the day will come when we get all our newspapers and magazines by home computer, but that's a few years off. So for the moment at least, this fellow isn't worried about being out of a job. Steve Newman, News Center 4.
When it takes over 2 hours to receive the entire text of the newspaper over the phone, and with an hourly use charge of $5, the new telepaper won't be much competition for the 20-cent street edition.
The new telepaper. So, give me the year. Okay, unless you cheated and looked in advance, give me the year of this news story. There's no prize or anything, but it would be
81.
You ready? Did you cheat?
I cheated. I saw it on the wrong side.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, at least you're honest. So that's good. Okay. Yeah, 1981. That was. So this is the point. Let me turn this down. This is the point where I would say to you that it is highly likely that in our session today you will. Can you hear okay in the back? Okay. That you will not agree with everything that I'm about to share with you. But as I shared this morning, my roots are in broadcasting, not only in radio, but also in television. Growing up, my dad and uncle farmed 2,000 some odd acres at that time, which was a crazy amount of land, of corn and soybeans. They raised hogs as well. It was always interesting to me that when people came to visit us, that they went, "Oh my gosh, what is that smell?" And I learned very early on that smell was money. Very, very early on. So I really feel like I can create a conversation for all of you today that's exceedingly relevant to what you do day in and day out. But because I've been married 17 years, I know that you won't agree with me. I'm good at being wrong. But I don't want you to get hung up on an idea or something I share with you today that you don't agree with. Don't get so hung up that you miss the next opportunity to potentially grow and potentially make money on some of these ideas. So can we agree that we may have to disagree? That's compromise, right? Sure. So let's look at some other things that people have put some predictions in that have been wrong and actually not come true at all. Everyone acquainted with this subject will recognize it as a conspicuous failure. Anybody know who said that or what they were talking about? That would have been Henry Morton, president of the Stevens Institute, as he talked about Edison's light bulb. Here's the quote again. Isn't that interesting? Other things, people. 18,000 vacuum tubes and weighs 30 tons. Computers in the future may only have 1,000 vacuum tubes and perhaps weigh only 1.5 tons. What year do you think that was? Only 1949. I would have guessed it would have been perhaps a little bit older than that. Actually, he was pretty close because within the next 10 years, the computers did get smaller and smaller and smaller. Another technology prediction, there is no reason for an individual to have a computer in his home. Well, who do you think may have said that? Digital Equipment Corporation's president and chairman at that time in 1977. And look where he was speaking to, the World Future Society in Boston. That company eventually became another company that's real close related called IBM. The horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad. That wasn't Henry Ford that said that, I'm sure of that. Who do you think it was? Somebody close to him. Real close. The president of the Michigan Savings Bank advising Henry Ford's lawyer not to invest in the Ford Motor Company. How many predictions could be wrong? How about this one? The wireless music box has no imaginable commercial value. Who would pay for a message sent to no one in particular? Are you familiar with a gentleman named David Sarnoff, who eventually was one of the founding fathers of NBC and NBC Radio? And that was in 1921. It wasn't really that long ago. This is a funny one concerning what we've just been through the last couple of days, don't you think? Democracy will be dead by 1950. What year do you think that was said? That was 1936. So as we roll forward today, it's so important for us to understand that we have to grasp what we have in front of us. You're not going to agree with everything. There's a lot of people I talked to after our session this morning, they said, I hate LinkedIn. I didn't realize it had any value. So the things we're going to talk about today, I really truly feel you're going to see some real intrinsic value from them. Now this is important as we roll forward, okay? Users expect and they demand interaction from us as broadcasters. Would you be surprised to know that Brian Williams actually replies to people that reply to his tweets and engage with him on his blog? I mean, he's one of the biggest television broadcasters in the industry. Megyn Kelly on Fox News, are you familiar with her? I mean, when she's on the air, people actively tweet to her and she responds, and very often in real time. As we roll forward, not just next year, but years forward, listeners are going to demand a higher level of interaction with us, and our advertisers demand a higher level of interaction. So what can we do? For some of you, the first place, even though Twitter is not new, for you, some of you as broadcasters, as ad salespeople, have to really understand what Twitter is all about. I mean, 14 million tweets a minute during the presidential elections, during the presidential debates. As we look forward to the future, we have to make sure that we not only learn about new technology, but we embrace that new technology. This is really important. This is actually the Twitter feed that Fox News does. The interesting thing about it is that they actually work into this feed sales and sponsored messages. So Twitter is not just about communicating with your listeners back and forth. It's also a saleable opportunity. And I'm going to get into some pretty good detail about that today. But you can see that the interesting thing about the internet is the great equalizer. You can be as big as Fox News. Now you might say, I don't have the staff to do it. Here's the thing. Broadcasters globally are just embracing these social medias because it gives them an absolute perfect opportunity to reach listeners and viewers one-on-one. So how do you set it up? A lot of times it's just getting going, taking the first step, and moving forward. Create a business Facebook page, and the key about making money and helping your Facebook page grow at your stations is you've got to have conversations. See, a lot of times what happens in the broadcast community is that people do have a Facebook page, but what it is it's push technology. So as things are happening at the station, they'll just push those things out to Facebook. What you want to do actually to make money off of it, you have to create conversations. So what's the fastest, easiest, quickest way at a station level or at a broadcast level? Asking questions. Asking questions on your Facebook page as opposed to just pushing things out. See, the reason this is relevant to making money is because you could have, say, 5,000 people be fans of your Facebook page. But that doesn't actually mean that it's a sellable entity. Because as you're doing things on Facebook, as you're engaging on Facebook, people are actually doing something with your post. If you want to make it a sellable entity, there's got to be a lot of engagement. See, a lot of times people will say, well, we have a Facebook page and we have 4,000 fans. Excellent. That's a very, very good start. But of those 4,000 fans on your Facebook page, how many people actually do something? When you post something, how many people actually do something with it? That's where we begin to be able to push some sponsored messages to them. And we'll talk about that. Now, how many of you actually have a company Facebook page for your station or group? Okay? Now, how many of you actively recognize that there's conversations that are happening? Do you see your stations having a lot of conversations? Okay? Not a lot. How many people sell into your Facebook feeds now? Okay? Well, we're going to get into some great detail about it because I have clients, so a couple, they're small. Holistic Horse Magazine. I don't know how much smaller you can get than that. It's a super niche. A niche within a niche. Holistic Horse. She'll make in a quarter, 30 grand off of her Facebook page. Would you take 30 grand? I guess maybe it's not as much money to you as it is to me. Okay. Now, the big thing though when you're talking about social media though, and trends for making money is that we need to eliminate communication barriers to our listeners. Anything that stops them from being able to communicate directly to us is a bad thing. See, it used to be that you kind of sat up on a little bit of a pillar as a broadcaster, and now what's happening is the web and social media has really made it the great equalizer. So it gives us an opportunity to be able to interact at a much better level. Why is it important that we interact with listeners? Because then we actually give them what they want. One of the reasons that newspapers became irrelevant, are becoming even more irrelevant today than ever before, is something that you all should pay attention and learn from. You want to be relevant to your listeners. It used to be that you had to make a lot of assumptions on what you should broadcast, on what they actually wanted. You made assumptions. If you were right, you made money and you continued to be popular. If you were wrong, you went out of business. Well, now, because we have interaction with our listeners, we can actually deliver back to them exactly what they're talking about and what they want. Trust me, I think you would agree, they'll tell you if you're right, if you're wrong, if they want more. The trouble is, most broadcasters, radio and television, just really don't listen carefully at a smaller market level. They're too busy just, it's there. It's that Facebook thing. It's the Twitter, and we don't have time for that. What I'm sharing with you is it actually helps you create content and programming that's more relevant, as well as you drive the conversations, you can sell it, and make money. I'm going to give you some pricing considerations here in a minute. Now, when it comes to radio, mobile devices, especially in your particular space, are becoming more and more popular. In 2013, mobile devices will pass PCs to be the most common web access tool. Did you know that? So you've got millions of people on computers, right? In 2013, the number of phones is going to actually surpass the number of PCs. By 2015, over 80% of handsets in mature markets will be smartphones. 20% of those will be Windows phones. So everybody has got this kind of craze that they say, hey, the iPhone is everything. The mobile battle between the iPhone and Samsung Galaxy and the Droid market and what Google is doing is ferocious right now. So it's important as you see articles news stories and things like that happening, that you actually take a minute and read those articles to keep up. Because by 2015, 80% of handsets in mature markets are going to be smartphones. What does that mean to you as a farm broadcaster? It means a very, very fast ability for those users, those listeners, to be able to connect directly to the station, directly to your podcast, directly to your information, if they're not doing so already. Now, 67% of this is awesome for sales. 67% of podcast listeners don't mind sponsorship messages and occasionally find them useful, compared to only 6% positive sentiment expressed for the advertising approaches of television or commercial radio. So that's a sellable entity to me. What that's telling us is people like podcast information. See, I often hear at conferences that I attend for geeks and people that are geeks in groups is what they call it, is that podcast it's an old school. It's an old school technology. Nobody uses it or appreciates it anymore. As a matter of fact, what we're finding is that the more relevant the podcast, the greater the receptivity. The greater the receptivity, the more likely it is that we can sell it. So if the podcast is set up correctly and it downloads automatically from the internet, your ability right here is saying that 60% of podcast listeners don't mind sponsorship messages. Nearly 80% of podcast consumers, responding to a survey from Total Podcast Radio, agree that when price and quality is equal, they prefer to buy products from companies that advertise or sponsors companies that advertise on or sponsor the podcast they regularly enjoy. See, if I'm selling podcasts at my station or my group, this is a very, very powerful statistic that I want to be able to embrace. Now, how many people do podcasts on a regular basis? How many people used to and now you don't? Okay, so the nice thing about it is podcasts are insanely easy for an intern, a lower level employee to take what's being broadcast in modules, create those podcasts, and make them subscription-based. Then you tie a sponsor to it. It's really, really easy to do. Many times it doesn't happen, though, because you, as a collective group, decide that you don't know how to do it. So since you don't know how to do it, and you don't like it, and you don't use it, then it's irrelevant. Here's the thing to remember. I don't personally like Facebook. Me personally, if it went away, I really wouldn't care. But you know what's interesting is, if it went away, my mother would be pretty upset because she can't see what's happening with her grandkids. It is a tool for my mom to keep up with her family. Isn't that awesome? But I'm not a big fan. Salespeople this morning have said, I hate LinkedIn. It's messy. It's a waste of my time. I shared with you how it helps my teams grow their response rates by 25%. I think that's exceedingly relevant. See, very often as broadcasters, general managers, leaders within our organizations, we don't pursue things because either A, we don't like them, or B, we don't know how to make them happen. Instead, what I'd encourage you to consider is this millennial generation that's coming up. And remember about the millennial generation, okay, the groups of 25 to 35-year-olds right now that sometimes are hard to manage, want to come to work in flip-flops, wear cutoffs, really in their whole life they've just been basically given a lot of simple, easy things. Did you need me to move? Or am I part of the picture? Oh, okay, cool. Then I'm going to do a lot of hand gestures. The important thing to remember is that they absolutely know how to do this. They love to do this. They can embrace it in a very, very robust way, and you can make a lot of money off of it. Now, if they don't know how to do it, well, then have them give me a call. We'll talk them through it. Now, next, revenue trend. He who owns the data, make note of this, he who owns the data will win. I promise you that. Who is the owner of most of the data right now? Anybody? It's this little company called Google. You think when you're getting signed up for all these things for free that they're not actually using your data? See, here's the thing to remember. I, about 2 years ago, went on a Carnival cruise. For some reason, every time I'm on Google, what are the ads that I see? Just happens to be Carnival Cruise. Well, that's interesting because I bought 2 or 3 pieces of equipment for my company. And what just so happens to appear every time that I'm on Google? The supplies that run all of those machines. Is that circumstance? I don't think so. That's intentional. So here's the question to ask yourself as leaders within your organizations today, as salespeople as well. What will you do to collect, own, and sell data? Now, it's not swarmy. It's not unethical. It's not mischievous. Okay? What are you going to do to own the data of your listeners so that you can mine that data, sell that data, push information to those listeners? What are you going to do? Well, some of the fastest things to do is actually put together a contest and promotional calendar. See, we put a lot of effort into many of the things that we do within our station groups, but one of the things that typically doesn't happen is a dedicated contest and promo calendar, so that the sales team accurately knows in February, these are the 3 contests that we're running. We need sponsors for those 3 contests. What happens with contests and promotions? See, there's this misnomer that it's false, that people don't like to win things. That's just not the case. People intrinsically absolutely love to win things. People old and people young. What is the core demographic, the #1 core demographic of contesters? What's their age group, do you think? I'll give you 4 letters. A-A-R-P. You familiar with that group? Okay, so it's not youngsters, it's not tweens and teens, it's not young adults, it's the AARP, the 55-plus group. That many of your demographics match that perfectly, yet for some reason someone told you, or you heard somebody say, yeah, our listeners, they just don't really respond well to that many contests and promotions. See, the key is this. With contests and promotions, we can take that contest entry, okay? We can take that data from the web, the email address and the demographic data. We can drive that into sales initiatives. We can take that information, we can drive it into newsletter, saleable initiatives. We can push, podcast, updatable information to those folks. But what it starts out with, though, is a specific contest and promotional calendar. It has to be very, very specific, month by month, week by week. Who are the advertisers that we could line up? See, when I'm working with some of my station groups, we'll actually go in and we'll have a whiteboard. Okay? On the whiteboard, a big one. They're not that expensive. Take black electrical tape and separate that whiteboard out by month. Then we're going to put in our contests and promotions, and we're going to say, okay, Bart's going to say to the team, hey team, okay, which advertisers could we align with these potential contests? Way in advance, and we pre-sell as much of that as we can towards the year. Then, though, where are we going to send them to sign up? Give them multiple ways to sign up. Can we sign up on Facebook? Yeah, because we want to be where they're at. Can we sign up on the web? Sure, that's great. Is there a way for them to call in to sign up? The old-fashioned postcard, can they send it in? What are we doing with that data? How are we collecting that data so that we can mine that data so that in our market, we're going to be the data king or queen? Because when push comes to shove at the end, he who owns the data is going to win. Do you want to be the king or queen of that pile of information? I would say yes, that you do. You absolutely do. So you need to ask yourself from a sales perspective, what are we going to do to be able to bring in as much data as possible, put it into even if it's an Excel file, so that you can manage it. All right, any questions on data before we move on? Now, very often tablets are overlooked in the broadcast space because even though right now the Kindle Fire is supposed to be one of the largest sellers this Christmas holiday season. So what do people do with the Kindle? Here's the interesting thing about it. I recently asked my son, who has a Nook, I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm reading a magazine. In my mind, I'm thinking, you're reading your Nook, you're not really reading a magazine, so that's very interesting. I said, well, if you're reading a magazine, what's your favorite subscription? Well, maybe my favorite subscription is Sports Illustrated for Kids. The child has never received a print subscription, ever, to Sports Illustrated for Kids. So already, as a 13-year-old, okay, a male 13-year-old, so he's hopefully going to be off to college in what? So he's in 8th grade, hopefully, 4 years. And then he's going to be out of school, hopefully in 4 years, which I'll be broke by then, but he's going to be out of college by then. So that is what year? I know it's after lunch. So right now we're in 2012. So 4 years from then, he's going to be in college. That's what year? 2016. 4 more years he's out of college. Okay, so by 2020, the cycle is going to be probably fairly close to being complete. So by that time, I'm telling my magazine customers, hello, wake up here. By 2020, Dylan, who's not unusual from any teenager in America right now, and he lives on a farm, he's raised around animals, he can take care of horses better than most grown adults, okay? He is not an unusual kid by any stretch of the imagination. By approximately 2020, he's considering this device to be a magazine, to be a book, to be his media connection to all things media for him. He sits on YouTube, and he downloads podcasts of gamers, and he's constantly engaged on his tablet. So why do so many broadcasters ignore the tablet? Again, it comes back to they don't like it, they don't think it's that big of a deal, they don't think it's their core audience. Here's the thing to remember. Why is my son not your audience? Maybe not currently, but what are you doing now to make sure you put plans in place, even if it's little steps every year? See, I find a lot of broadcasters just ignore it. They just ignore the obvious because they don't want to mess with it. They just don't want to fuss with it right now. We're going to worry Ryan about making money right now. Remember something. What's your plan to even attack one device, one tablet-type device in 2013? Okay, what's your plan to even attack one? Now, you want to survey for the most common user demographic and don't make too many broad assumptions. When's the last time that you've actually surveyed your listeners and said, listen, we'd really like to know what type of devices you're using, what you're buying, how you're consuming all of our information. See, surveys and usability studies are just mission critical to your success in the media business. Most of my clients will run at least one listener or reader or viewer survey per quarter. How do you do it so it's efficient and it can make you money? A, ask one question at a time. See, very often when you send out a survey, you don't get a lot of response, and why is that? Because you ask 25 questions. So on your website, you might do a poll or might ask one single question for the month of January. Then you might ask a different question on your website for the month of February. Say in March, you send out a newsletter to get a little bit more information from them. What you're doing over the course of a year, because notoriously people are lazy, unfortunately, you're asking them for little tiny bits of information. How much data do you need to have a complete survey? What does Gallup say? 700 is, they can predict, if you will, the presidential election of 700. What happens after 700? The results don't change, just the amount of information you collect actually goes up. So you really don't need thousands of responses to put together a nice user group to know what your listeners actually want, actually need, and how they're consuming your information. So right now, just as I shared this morning, was riding in a new, one of the brand new, spanking new John Deere combines from RDO. And they actually have a plug in there for your iPad to load information. They have all the media device inputs. They've got USBs. Anything you want to plug in that you can find in a car and more, you can actually find in that combine. It's a little scary to me to realize that some of these guys are like watching movies on their iPad as they're bouncing down, a soybean field, But they are going to get that loud buzzer at the end row. But the thing to remember is that you can't be making so many broad assumptions because, well, I've been in the broadcasting business for 35 years, 45 years, 55 years. The thing about that is I appreciate that, and I very, very much respect that. But we don't have to make broad assumptions anymore. We don't have to. We can ask people for information. We can go to Google AdWords and figure out what is it people are searching for. From a sales perspective, this is going to be so important to our future to really understand how do we make money on tablets? What do we do? What do we do with advertising? And here's the interesting thing. It's not a far stretch from what's happening on the web. It's just a matter of getting the plans in place. So I encourage you to consider what's one thing we're going to do in 2013 to move forward towards the tablets. I mean, this picture is actually not current, it's a little bit old because there's so many more in the marketplace. But is it so far-fetched to think that my 13-year-old, by 2020, is still interested in the things he is and just goes and every day loads his podcast, boom, 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 for his information? This is a child when I woke up in the morning as a kid, and maybe you too, because you only saw cartoons when? Before school and after school. Remember that when that used to be the day? Well, this kid could be watching the Cartoon Network, but he's not. What is he watching in the morning? I'm like, why are you watching Fox News? I mean, you might grow up to be slightly jaded, but I don't know, But, it just discusses some of the programs. But this is not unusual. This is not like unusual behavior for kids because they're so used to consuming so much information. Next, revenue thought and idea and trend. Product-specific email blasts. How many of you right now sell, so you have a certain number of e-newsletter subscribers at your station? How many of you right now push out to that list, and that's a sellable opportunity? You can sell to that. Okay, just a couple? All right? So you're collecting email addresses from people, right? Here's the idea behind this. So this is just a mock-up. We use contests to collect email addresses. We begin to assemble together an email list of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10,000, whatever it is. Okay? And you want that number to grow and grow and grow. And then as a sales team, what we do, let's just say, in this example, this is just an example, let's just say that this is the month of January, okay? And in this example, we're going to contact, in the month of January, new people in the month of January that have new products or new models coming out, let's just say for tractors, new tractor models, okay? We recently just did this for one of my customers, and we had Bobcats and John Deere, and I forget who else was in the push. But this is all sales driven. They paid $1,000 to be included in this product-specific e-blast that went out to their viewers. It was of a television station, to their viewers. And what they did is they started, so this spot was 1,000, this one was 1,000, this spot, I think it dropped to like 750, then 500 as it went down. This is all done by a sales assistant and the sales team. So these boat manufacturers provide the picture and a little bit of text. All we needed was the email addresses, because you have a very specific listener, correct? So as you use your contests and you grow your email lists, putting together product-specific e-blasts is something that listeners, viewers, readers absolutely love. How many people enjoy a hobby outside of your work? Some type of hobby. Any like golfers, hiking, things like that? When you receive emails about new products that come out, anybody into like outdoor type stuff? Okay, oh, there you go. So new gear that comes out. When you get an email, if you have a choice between reading an editorial e-newsletter that comes out from a radio station or TV station that talks about news and new products that apply to your hobby or business, which one do you typically choose? Typically, I choose the one that's about my hobby or my interest or my business, as opposed to news that I've already heard on the radio, TV station, or read on the web. The open rate on these type of pushes right here, the open rate is over 40%, which is twice the national average. They're super easy to sell, but where does it all begin? It all begins with what we talked about a couple minutes ago, and that is the trend for people collecting email addresses is not new, but it's growing, and it's something we have to do as organizations, because this right here, for some of my customers, I've got a couple of TV stations in very small markets. They're going to do 30 to 40 grand a quarter from product-specific pushes. So what are some of those pushes, just so you understand kind of where I'm coming from? Let's just say that they do a lot of business news, okay? So one of the pushes might be all about lawyers. One might be all about doctors. One might be all about new products. One might be all about fertilizer. One might be all about new diesel engines. I mean, the sky is really the limit when it comes to putting together product-specific e-blasts. Now, is this new? To the world, no. To the broadcasting space, it actually is fairly new. In Nashville, at the National Association of Broadcasters Conference, 4 TV stations won awards for this type of enterprise. And I thought to myself, well, shoot, this is not really new. In the magazine business, we've been doing this for a while. But in the broadcast space, we're not doing enough. It's called ancillary incremental revenue. Now, I'm not talking about stacking up pennies, but I am talking about stacking up dimes or quarters. And let me tell you something. If you were to call on, remember the packages we talked about this morning? Okay, the bundled packages? If we were to call on an advertiser and say, you get X number of spots on the station, you get X number of product-specific e-blasts, you get 3 or 4 mentions on our Facebook feed, all of a sudden we've got something juicy. We're getting beyond the, well, radio's kind of old school. We're getting beyond that. Because now we're involving a lot more sizzle to the situation. And this is not hard to sell. I can sell this all day long. Okay? Yes?
So I understand the sales and marketing opportunities here, but at what point do you owe it to a reader or listener to identify what is sponsored versus independent content?
See, most of the time, and this is my opinion, so it's a point where you and I, we may not agree. And for the most part, the person that's receiving it doesn't care. Now, you may have, I don't know you, so there may be an ethical consideration where you might feel to yourself, hey, I really believe we should point out this is sponsored, and then maybe you could put that along the top, or you could put that on the bottom or along the side. But for the most part, what I have found working with my companies is that most of the time the reader doesn't care. As long as when you take in their email address, you make it very clear what you're going to do. We're going to send you updates on contests, promotions, we're going to send you sponsor messages. Just make a nice little paragraph that makes it pretty clear, what you're going to do. But I really think it's a personal business decision for your company. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I know that a lot of the current trends are to blur the too, between sponsored and, I mean, you see it on almost every website, but at some point in time, I also think it's a little bit of a niche to be able to say it's not sponsored. So, just kind of curious how you can handle it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I don't, I consider myself to be like a fiscally conservative, socially moderate individual. So I don't mind riding that edge, but I don't think there's anything wrong with declaring that it's sponsored. If you think it's going to ruin the message, then you might want to, think about it. But overall, these are just the plans that I really want you guys to consider putting in place for 2013 in a pretty big, robust way. Now, one of the things, the biggest trend that's going to happen in 2013 is that it's already begun, but almost everything is moving over to, you hear people talk about everything's in the cloud. Well, someone asked before this, a couple weeks ago actually, to include this, because no one really understands what really the cloud means. They just think it's some vapor in the air, okay? The point to you is, we want to make sure that we are, as broadcasters, where the listener lives. So here's an example so you can kind of see what they mean, okay? So the internet is obviously a bunch of computers that are all strung together, okay? Out there, for example, Apple is one of the largest clouds that there is, okay? And so is Google. So your information is living in one specific location. It's living on a server someplace, whichever provider you choose. Like, for example, I use iCloud Backup because that's where all my Apple stuff lives. So when I buy something from iTunes, a movie, whether it's in my home, to watch it at home, or it's on my computer for when I'm traveling, it all lives in Apple's cloud. So I can see it. I can watch it on my computer. I can watch it on my desktop. I can watch it on my mobile devices. I can watch it on my notebook. And I can watch it, basically any place that I want. Everything is synced up. So the cloud, if you will, is on the internet is basically a server someplace. You choose where it's going to be, and everything basically resides there. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because as broadcasters, we have to understand that we have to be a part of the cloud because we need to make sure that we are where our listeners are or where they want us to be. See, it used to be that you could build it and they would come. You remember the movie Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. Yeah, that does not apply to the internet at all. So the thing to remember is we have to ask ourselves if we're taking a particular portion of a broadcast and putting it someplace. Let's just say that it's a legal minute or a farm tip or whatever it is. We have to make sure that we're making that available wherever our users, our listeners want it to be. Maybe it's Amazon Prime. I don't know. Maybe it's in the Barnes & Noble store. Maybe it's on Apple iTunes. I don't know where they want it to be. I actually think that there's a business model out there for people that are in the ag space to want to go to one location for all of their information. I think there's some companies in this room that are already on that path. But I think there's a real benefit to understanding that we live in a very scattered world. And people do love niches. They love niches. I love being a part of a niche. Niches make sense. So I think there's some business models that we need to explore. But I wanted to talk for a brief second about this because I think it's exceedingly important for you to understand what the cloud is. So that as you move forward and hear about that or people talk about it, you'll really have a good idea of what it is. Okay? All right, rolling forward. Social media is the biggest cluster of madness and stupidity that I've ever encountered in the last 10 years. And I've been in the media business since 94. It's maddening. Do you agree? Yeah. It's maddening. It's cluttered. It's full of junk. But here's what's happening in 2013 and beyond. You're going to see that Facebook is going to become a lot less popular. And so many of these websites, whether it's on Spotify or Nextdoor, there's so many of these little websites that are popping up. And what they are is they're niches. They're where people want to be. One of the first ones that I was a part of starting was a website called horsecity.com. It was a website where horse people could come and find anything they wanted to do in terms of shopping, saddles, pads, blankets, news, videos, etc. So we started this niche website. From a business perspective, each one of your stations does something very special for a special demographic of people. So I really think that what you want to watch for is not as much what's happening on Facebook or what's happening on Pinterest, are terms like this, like hyper-local, global. If you say that aloud, it just sounds dumb. It just sounds stupid. The big thing for me, though, is I want to sell it. I want to make money from it. Remember, so what I'm talking about is I believe we're going to see Facebook become less and less popular. Did you know that 75% of Facebook users 75% do not live in the United States. Did you know that? 75% of Facebook users don't even live in the United States. So people that are investing all kinds of money in Facebook, the thing about it is this. I really potentially think you're investing your money in the wrong place. I think we want to find social websites where we can actively engage on a local, or we can create those ourselves around our station groups, or around our radio stations proper, or our programs. Anything we can do to allow them to come into one spot, listen in one spot, shop in one spot, find business directories and local businesses in one spot, and it might mean strategic partnerships with other people, in your community. But let's talk for a second on how you sell it, okay? So this is inside the guts, if you will, of Facebook, okay? Remember, I said that in circumstances, you all have Facebook pages, and you might have, say, 5,000 fans. You can't sell to 5,000 fans. Okay? You can't go out and sell based on 5,000 fans. That's like a potential. What you can sell, though, what people want you to do is they want to know, this is a post that happened on 9/10/2012. This was the post. It doesn't matter what it was, but this was the post. This is actually the number of people it reached, 121. 121 people, okay? So what you have is you have 613 total likes or fans on this Facebook page. When this post was placed up, it actually reached 121 of them. But here's the important number. It's called engaged users. Five people did something with that post. Now, they could have started a new post. They could have shared it, etc., etc. But out of 613 people that liked this particular Facebook page, when this particular post went up, these are the number of people that actually engaged and did something with it. So this is Facebook Insights. Okay, you can find it on your Facebook page in the background. If you don't know where it's at, or you can't find it, and maybe after this conversation you potentially care about it, then reach out to me and I'll send you a video link on how to get into it. Because this is what you're going to sell. So remember, the web is the great equalizer. So even though this is an example from Elle magazine, doesn't matter. Okay, because people that read Facebook and engage with Facebook typically act the same way. Now, to this woman's question, though, about it being sponsored, which I think is a great question, look at how they do it here on their business page. So it says sponsored, okay? And then they give a bit of information. They give a link over to something that's on their website, and then clearly this is something that's, that's sponsored, because it says it's sponsored. And that's how it works into their feed, just like that. So how does this apply to a local radio market? When you're putting together your packages, using that power grid that we showed this morning, where someone can buy the gold package, they're going to get X number of spots on the station, they're going to get X number of Facebook mentions. This is exactly what we're talking about. So how do you charge for it? The national average, you might want to make note of this, is somewhere between 75 and 125 per thousand, based on the number of people that are doing something with that post. 75 to 125. So if you have 1,000 people that are engaging in your post, you'll be able to charge for each post basically $100. Now, most of the time, what most broadcasters do is give it away. You give away your banner ads, you give away your e-newsletters, you give away your Facebook posts. In the end, when you don't have any money left, you say, my gosh, why did we not make any money? Well, because we're not learning from the mistakes that we made. Here's the thing to remember. If you begin to charge from it from day one, you're going to be in a much better situation, even if it's $1. Charge $1. Stop giving it away. The thing about it that you have to remember is, people that love Facebook, and like I said, I'm not crazy about it, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. You may not be crazy about it either. My mother loves it. My wife absolutely, unequivocally loves Facebook. That's how she engages with people. So is she wacky? She's not here, so perhaps. But the thing is, in this case, they're paying $100 1,000. They're paying $100 1,000 in markets all across the country. TV, radio, not so much newspapers, magazines. So then you ask yourself, remember we talked about that contest calendar? What are we going to do in that contest calendar to drive more people to our Facebook page? Again, you've got to get over the thought process in your head. I don't like Facebook. Yeah, we have a Facebook page. I mean, we have it over here. It's a horrible way to treat the social media enterprise in general. Yeah, we got a Facebook page. I mean, we have one of those too. It's a horrible way to think about it, because you're leaving money on the table. You're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. Now you're saying to me, probably in your head, will an advertiser pay for it? Not every advertiser. And why don't they pay for it? Because they're not educated. They don't understand why they should pay for it. They're saying, well, I have my own Facebook page. Well, what do you do? You have your own Facebook page. How many fans do you have? Well, I've got 300. Well, we're going to have 3,000. And we're a media outlet. We're a trusted resource. We're a Facebook page that we put news up, people actually respond to. See, when I'm training sales teams, people will say, yeah, but I go over and I talk to Tom, and I said, hey, Tom, we've got Facebook, you can have mentions. And Tom says, as a business owner, well, I've got my own Facebook page. Why do I need yours? And they say, I don't know. That's why these salespeople need to be trained to understand. I would say, Tom, yeah, cool, you have your own Facebook page. That's awesome. We can drive your Facebook fans even higher, but we're a trusted media resource. People come to our Facebook page to enter contests, to read news, to engage with other like-minded listeners, and it's a sellable resource. Is it sellable on its own? Most of the time, no, except people that want to promote events or short-term things and don't really look for a contract. But here's the thing. I don't do that. I don't allow it. Here's the thing that I refer to it. It's radio plus, or it's airtime plus. The more you buy from me on my primary media, the more I can do for you in my ancillary media. I don't let people just, pick. What do you call that? Cherry pick. I don't let advertisers say, well, I only want to do Facebook. Because what if they have great results and they're really not going to buy airtime? So I make sure that they understand, listen, this is our Radio Plus program. Radio Plus program is really simple. The more airtime you buy from us, the more we can do on the web, in social media. We've got a television partner. We've got this event sponsorship. I don't let them cherry pick. Now, that may have to change one day, but that's okay. I mean, it may have to change. Here's the great thing about the radio business. Let's say that every listener moves over to their iPad. Well, I mean, think about the monetary savings from that. You're able to track all the listeners, know when they're engaging, know exactly where they are, when they are, how long they're listening, who they are. I mean, we're in a business. Some people would say, oh, it's an old business, it's a dying business. It's just not true. Do you not think today people are consuming more media than they did yesterday? Well, I mean, the election being over, it might be slightly unfair, but if everybody's watching the stock market, they're definitely consuming information today. The thing to remember is, we're in a great business because even if it all moves to tablet, everything moves to tablet, we still going to need what? Broadcasters, announcers, content, advertising. It's all still going to exist. It's just going to be delivered slightly, possibly, in a different way. See, it's not unusual when you think of XM and Sirius that are trying to create all of these contracts with local stations so people can pull up local information. Why are they doing that? Because they know that it's important, right? They absolutely know that it's important. If you were going to do anything after this conference, there's two things that I would consider. One, the specialized e-news pushes. Two, your pricing grids. Maybe three, getting a better understanding of this so that you can sell it and include it in your packages. Because this is going to add 3-4% more value to your packages. So if you sell 10 packages and can make 4% more money, that's money on the table, and that's smart. It's just a really, really good thing. All right? So what's your action plan? Let's think about it for a second. So everybody, let's pause. Let's look back across the landscape of what we talked about. It's not about whether you understand it. It's about whether you potentially think, hey, there's some potential here. I think this might work for my group. You can always get a better understanding. You can always get a better understanding. So let's pause for a second. What's one thing we talked about here over the course of this last hour? What's one thing that you think, yeah, either A, as a salesperson, because all great ideas come from salespeople. Never forget that. Am I wrong? Come on, salespeople, let's go here. It's important for you to think of one thing that either you can sell, because I want a rep to come to me. I want a rep to come to me and say, Ryan, this is something I can sell. I know I can sell it. When do salespeople sell better? When you shove stuff to them and say, just go sell it? Or when it's actually their idea? Remember, people are always more passionate about projects when they're asked to participate. Always. What's the biggest gripe of most salespeople? Oh, I just got dumped on more crap to sell. So ask yourself, as a salesperson here today, are the ideas we talked about, can I sell it? And that's something to go to the boss with. As a leader in your organization, what's one of these ideas you say, yeah, I think I could really sink my teeth into that and benefit my group? Anybody willing to share one of the things we talked about you might be able to sink your teeth into? Yes, sir.
Ask questions, direct questions on Facebook.
Okay? Create better conversations on Facebook. Yeah? And then that drives the engagement up on Facebook, which then makes it better and easier to sell Facebook. So I did see, no show of hands, right? Nobody currently sells Facebook. correct? Now, is it because you think it's a violation of Facebook or because you just don't do it? Sir? Don't know how. Okay. And so this is a good start. I mean, at least it's a good conversation. It's not a violation of Facebook's terms and services. Otherwise, a major company like Al wouldn't be doing it. I mean, they've got more lawyers than probably can fit in this room. Only saying. All right, anybody else?
I just want to say, like, another way to ask questions on Facebook, I worked on campaigns, and we would do, like, questions. So, like, on the top, you wouldn't even write it in status, because I think most of the time no one, like, responds on the status. But you have a poll, and you write, are you voting for so-and-so, like, and then they answer, like, you have 2 questions. And, like, anyway, you just click the button. It's at the top of your newsfeed, and you just click it. And I think that got the most, like, attention that we've ever had.
And that's a great idea.
Yeah.
It also gives you the ability to collect more data as you're trying to build your demographic profile.
Yeah, and the other cool thing about it was, like, anyone could share it with anyone, so you could invite people to answer the poll. So people who you worked with could start inviting their friends, and they would invite their friends. And it
That's
was
great.
just really
Love it.
cool.
And what I would do is then wrap it around something I could sell in every case. All right, anybody else? Yes?
Just a comment, I heard recently from somebody who was engaging a lot, had increased traffic on Twitter. They said just like by simply, if you're tweeting something, put an exclamation point at the end of that tweet, and you get more people want to find out what you're talking about.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that. I do know that when you're selling on Facebook, using an image is mission critical. Anytime that we won't accept advertising on Facebook, it's got to meet our editorial guidelines, so it can't be something weird or wacky, and it has to be a benefit to our listeners or readers. And if you write it that way, you always get better engagement in a picture. I hadn't heard the explanation point, but that makes sense. All right, anybody else? Or questions before we wrap up? Anybody else want to share one of the things they thought today? All right, any questions about technology before we move for our last little bit here? All right, so out of our 2 classes that we were together today, I asked you to write one thing down this morning and then one thing down today. Here's the thing that I would challenge you from this conference. And I didn't attend the whole conference. I was in Minneapolis, and then I just couldn't be here. I will next time. If you take back 55 things and download those things on your staff when you get back, you're going to be hated, I promise. Because it always happened to me, and I hated that. Instead, I would personally, this is my opinion, I would encourage you to consider 3 or 4 things that you truly know that the group can sink their teeth into, and begin an action plan to execute those things. See, very often when you go to a conference like this, you come back and you download, and people hate that download. So find 3 or 4 things that you really can sink your teeth into, and begin to build an action plan. So what is an action plan? It always has to be written down. Always has to be written down. Always. Always has to be written down. Second, you always have to identify who are the players. Who's responsible for what? Who are the players that are going to help us execute this? See, there's nothing worse than working for a CEO, general manager, sales manager, whatever, and they say, here's what we're going to do. And they give this great idea, and then bam, everything from there just falls into the whatever, the thing that goes like this. The crapper, I guess you would call it. So you've got to know what it is and write it down, who are the stakeholders, and then set dated, it's really important, you might want to note this, dated milestones to the goal. So if the goal is to launch it in February 15th, dated milestones so that you can check in. If you do those 3 things, you'll have a much greater success than just saying, hey guys, I was at a conference, heard this really great idea, and off you went. Now, we covered, any questions on that? No, we covered a lot of stuff today, a ton, in a fairly short period of time. So if you would like a copy of this, or a copy of any of the information, like I did this morning, just trade cards with me here, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. And as a service to NAFB, if you have a question after this conference and you want to pop it over to me via email, I am more than happy, at no charge, to reply to that. It'd be my pleasure. Okay? Did you learn something today? Yeah? I know it's hard after lunch. They do that to me all the time. It does me all the time. Hey, I hope that you have enjoyed safe travels home, and thank you for letting me be here. I do appreciate it.